Hi there, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to our second webinar in our 2025 From the Helm series. We're thrilled to have so many of you here, reflecting on just how much interest there is in life on the cut. So, tonight's webinar is all about helping you make your narrowboat purchase a success. It's not a cautionary tale. We'll be covering key aspects of the buying process, from understanding the roles of brokers, financing your boat, to why getting a professional survey is essential. To share all this knowledge, we reached out to a few people who really know their stuff and are hugely respected within the industry. These guys have dealt with literally thousands and thousands of boat purchases for the inland waterways. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to our panel. First up, Emma Green, Managing Director of ABNB Boat Brokerage. Based in North Kilworth Marina, not far from Northampton, ABNB have a superb reputation within the industry for providing exemplary brokerage services. Emma herself was elected as an accredited member of the Association of Brokers and Yacht Agents in 2021 and became a full member in 2023. She also serves on the ABIA committee and sits on the board of directors, where she actively contributes to shaping industry standards and promoting professionalism among marine brokers. Outside of work, Emma and her husband own a small Woolwich narrowboat built in 1935 by Harland and Wolff. And being that old, it was probably surveyed by Ben himself. For the finance side of things, I'd like to welcome Stuart Austin, founder and director of Pro Marine Finance, which is the UK's leading provider of marine finance for inland boats and liveaboards. With over 3 decades of experience, I know he doesn't look old enough, in the finance industry. Stuart launched Pro Marine Finance in 2010 to fill the gap left by the traditional banks after the 2008 financial crisis. Offering smaller marine mortgages tailored to individual needs, a keen boater, Stuart brings a wealth of industry knowledge and practical advice to help prospective buyers navigate the financial aspects of boat ownership with confidence. And under Stuart's leadership, Pro Marine has grown to become the only consistent lender for inland boats and liveaboards, providing a personal service that reflects the team's own boating experience. Finally, what can we say about Ben Sutcliffe-Davis, a very familiar face within the industry and on our webinars? Ben brings over 45 years of unparalleled experience in the marine industry, specializing in boat building and marine surveying. His expertise spans timber, GRP, steel, aluminium, and he offers surveys on all manner of boat types. He is a fellow full member of the Yacht Designers and Surveyors Association, the YDSA, a full member of British Marine, the Canal Boat Builders Association, and the Society of Consulting Marine Engineers and Ship Surveyors. Ben's comprehensive understanding of boat construction and his extensive survey experience make him a hugely trusted authority when it comes to pre-purchase surveys, insurance assessments, and MCA coding inspections. Ben is also a regular contributor to Towpath Talk, which I'm sure many of you might read. Ben is one of the nicest guys you'll meet and is absolutely dedicated to sharing his vast knowledge to support boat owners. He has a YouTube channel called The Marine Surveyor's Notebook, which is full of really useful videos all about narrowboats, and I urge you all to take a look at it when you can. Thank you all so much for giving up your time to join us tonight.
Good evening.
So, there are generally 3 ways to buy a narrowboat. There may be more, but we're going to go with 3. Now, you can either go for a bespoke build, you can go through a new build which is already fitted out or unfitted, as in a sail away, or you can buy a boat second-hand. Our goal today is not to overwhelm you with scare stories of rogue sellers and boat purchasing disasters, but to empower you with knowledge so you can buy a boat with confidence. And whilst this webinar will mainly focus on second-hand purchases, there will be lots of useful information and tips which will be applicable to those buying a new build or a bespoke build as well. There is a lot of crossover within what we're talking about. Now, like any major purchase, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the number of decisions and steps involved. To try and make things easier, we've created this clear step-by-step process to guide you through an example narrowboat purchase, breaking down the journey into manageable stages, usually where a decision or action is required. We know that things don't always happen in the order that we have listed here, but for 90% of people buying a narrowboat, the process will be fairly predictable and in ways similar to what we've listed here. And you'll notice the process begins with the basics, which are shown in the large reservoir pound in the top left of our screen. Searching for boats, working out your budget, and talking to a broker. These early steps are crucial for setting realistic expectations and understanding what's available within your price range. From there, we guide you through to the fun part, going to look at boats and ultimately finding your perfect match. But it doesn't end with finding the boat you love. The next steps, like arranging finance, making an offer, subject to survey, and checking documentation, are vital, ensuring you don't encounter costly mistakes later on. One key part of this process is the survey stage. Whilst it may feel like an extra expense, a professional survey gives you peace of mind about the boat's condition and highlights any potential issues before you commit. This isn't about scare stories, it's about helping you make an informed choice and avoid unexpected costs down the line. And then once you've discussed the survey results and finalised your insurance and financing, you'll move on to the completion checklist, a crucial step to ensure no details are overlooked. And then the best part, completing the sale, stepping aboard your new narrowboat with your keys in your hand, ready for the adventures ahead. So let's get started with some tips on searching for narrowboats. So Emma, there's so many places where you can start your research. Can you just bring a few of them together for us?
Yeah, of course. Well, I suppose the first thing is to look at all the brokers' websites. Give them a ring. Most of them are happy to chat. Tell them what you're looking for. They can obviously make a note on their database. Most of the brokers offer like an email alert service as well. So if you sign up for that, you'll get notifications every time a new boat comes on brokerage. So it's worth signing up for those with the brokers. The other places obviously are Google, the Waterways Press. Apollo Duck is a big search engine for inland waterways. Waterways World as well have a boat search facility. And of course, you can come to Quick Boat Show and chat to all the brokers, look at boats. Perfect place to start your journey.
And just on that note, Quick Boat Show has a kind of a mix of new, it's not just all new boats, is it? There's new, used, and you can get a really good feel of what's available on the market just by wandering around for the day.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great if you're new to boating, it's a great show to attend. And you are able to step on board boats and have a nose, and you can start sort of compiling your list of what you're looking for in your own boat. So yeah, definitely it's worth a visit.
Excellent, thank you. And now the next sort of section is, what is your budget? Not everyone has got a wedge of cash in the bank that they've just got sitting burning a hole in their pocket, that all they want to do is hand it over for a narrowboat. What are the different ways, Emma, and I suppose you as well, Stuart, in this one, what are the different ways that people can purchase a boat? I mean, let's go through some options for them.
Yeah, I suppose, well, cash is the cash in the bank is the most popular and the easy option. There's lots of different ones. Obviously, Stuart with marine finance. Do you want to talk about that, Stuart?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everybody. Well, whilst cash might be the obvious apparent option, it's how people get to that cash position in the first place. And whilst we're one of the options, it's probably timing that's more important. It's about when you've got the cash. So if you've got the cash from selling property, perhaps remortgaging property if you own it, we also see pension funds, inheritance, and again, savings, which is cash. But if those options aren't available, then that's where we tend to step in. And that can be a long-term solution, or it can be a solution until one of those other cash generating options come along. So obviously, sadly, inheritance is one of those situations, which hopefully for most isn't predictable. But cashing in pension funds, selling property, or even other boats, if that isn't available immediately, rather than necessarily waiting for those windfalls to come along, then a marine finance option such as ourselves would perhaps speed up that process of being able to be in a position to purchase the boat that you've decided that you want. Does that kind of give an outline as to where that is?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose from our perspective, yes, there's a difference in, I think, what is quickly available as to. I think there's a difference between immediately available is cash, and obviously marine finance is fairly similar like that. But then you've got a lot of things which are relying on other things, like if you're selling a property, sale of another boat. There's a lot of sort of spinning plates if you're into that one.
Yeah, and the other thing there, which the personal loan aspect, which I suppose is to somewhat competition to ourselves, then that our experience of that at the moment is that it tends to top out at £20,000, which doesn't really get you a boat these days, or anything near something that is a quality boat. So the options really are your own personal resources or using ourselves, whether that be for a short-term requirement or indeed going up to 10 years or so.
I think as well, some brokers offer part exchange as well. So if you've got a boat that you're looking to trade in for a newer boat or a bigger boat or whatever, some brokers do offer part exchange. So it's worth exploring that option as well. And I think at the bottom there it says may require proof of funds. Certainly for us at ABNB, we do ask for proof of funds. So you will need to be able to show us that you've got the cash in the bank, or you know, a finance agreement in place.
Yeah, and just talking about one more thing there, we talked about timing and speed of access. Then I'm not really too sure these days how long sometimes people's savings are tied up, but typically our facilities are available within approvals within 24 hours, and then completions as soon as Ben's got round to doing his job, which no doubt we'll talk again later. So normally within a week or so, then we're talking completion times, I would imagine.
We're only on the second slide. We're already blaming the surveyor. One of the things I was going to say to you, Emma, was on part exchanges, what do you generally think is the normal accepted amount off for someone bringing a boat in?
Or well, we don't really do part exchange, but I
realise
know,
that.
yeah,
There are
I
brokers
know
out there.
there are, yeah, and I think you know that you expect to get less than if you put your boat on brokerage, and I don't want to put a figure on it. It used to
It's
be
dramatically less, isn't it? That's the point I was getting to get to, was the fact that people's expectations of a second-hand boat or their boat, when they go and take it to a part exchange, they may be quite devastated that suddenly there's a gap in what they were planning to go upwards, which is where people like Stuart can come in very quickly and help while you're trying to either make that decision of selling the boat privately or selling it through a broker or taking that part exchange hit.
Yeah, I mean, it could be you know, sort of up to 60% less than the brokerage value. So but if you're looking for a quick cash injection into your next purchase, then part exchange might be an option.
It's an option that I think always hurts.
Yeah, and that's probably where the bridging loans, because we do bridging loans across two boats to help mitigate those circumstances, to avoid that needing to take
sometimes that bridging loan will work out far less than what you're losing on the boat. That was the point I was just thinking of when you were talking it through.
Yes.
And obviously narrowboats can range significantly in size, but what about price range? Obviously age is a factor. There's a lot of factors with regard to how much someone's going to pay for a boat. So what is there a sort of average guideline price, or is it just based on a boat by boat basis?
Yeah, it's again, you can't just put a price. It depends on you know, the age, the builder, the equipment on board. I mean, you could pick up a fairly cheap narrowboat for sort of 15 to 20 grand, and then they go sort of right up to 200 plus. So you know, there's a vast range of a vast price range there.
And we've had a couple of questions.
Quality of build as well. Cool.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of questions come in already. So what form of proof of funds is required for cash purposes? What would you say is proof of funds for you?
Yeah, so for us, we ask for well, wherever your cash is sitting. So if it's in a bank account, we would want to see a statement showing that you've got the funds in there to cover the boat purchase. If it's you know, an early pension release, you can get a pension statement that shows the balance. So it's wherever your money is, we need to be able to see that you've got the funds to cover the boat purchase. If you're selling a property, for example, we wouldn't accept an offer unless you've got an exchange of contracts. So for that, we'd want to see something from a solicitor maybe that says that the house is sold and they're due to complete on a certain date. It's just to avoid, you know, the boats coming off the market and then sort of going down the survey route and then not having the funds to pay for it, because, you know, the boat's then been off the market for several weeks, and it's not fair on the vendors.
There is sorry, Paul. There is also, Emma, unlike the old days, you can't turn up with money in a suitcase any longer, can you?
No, sadly not. No.
Somewhat frowned upon.
It is, yeah.
Just somebody's come in and said, I know you've already said that a bank statement would a bank statement from an overseas bank account would still work for you? Would that be okay?
Yeah, so it does. Like I say, wherever your money is, we just need to see proof that you've got it. So with overseas customers, they need to allow extra time to transfer the funds across to our client account, because sometimes international payments can take longer. But so long as they've got the balance in their overseas bank account, that's absolutely fine.
Excellent. Okay. So once you've set your budgets and started looking at boats, the next crucial step, which I cannot recommend enough, is to talk to a broker. A reputable broker is there to guide you through the buying process, answer your questions, and help you find the right boat that meets your needs and budget. They act as the bridge between the buyers and the sellers, offering valuable advice on pricing, paperwork, and the overall market. Brokers are the centerpiece of any deal of this nature, because they liaise with all parties and make sure that everybody is kept in the loop regarding progress on the deal. Any repair work that needs to be done after survey, they can liaise with the yards and all that sort of side of thing. Working with a broker can save you time, can severely reduce your stress, and ensure you're fully informed before making an offer and throughout the deal process. To explain more about how a broker can support, I'm now going to hand over to Emma, who will walk you through their role and how they can make your narrowboat purchase a success.
Thank you. Although I think you've covered it all, really. I don't need to speak.
Really? Okay, I'll
right. No. So yeah, I mean, when we talk about a reputable broker, we're meaning a broker who's a member of an association such as British Marine or ABIA. So ABIA is the Association of Brokers and Yacht Agents. Being a member of these associations, you have to follow a code of practice, and it's that makes the you know, that broker a reputable broker. So how do you know that they're a reputable broker? Well, they should be a member of an association. They should have a premises where you can go and visit them. They should have insurance. You know, things sometimes unfortunately do happen, so they need to have insurance, adequate insurance. They should have a protected client account as well to look after your boat funds. And I suppose one of the important things that they do is they carry out due diligence. And I think we're going to talk about paperwork a bit later on, but a good broker will check title documentation, and they will look at the documentation to ensure that the history with the boat, that the transfer of ownership has all been done properly, that all the names match up on the paperwork. They will also check, as far as they can, that the boat can legally be sold. So with that, it's the title documentation, which I think we're going to talk about later. It's the RCD or CE marking, the RCD compliance. We also ask whether there is any outstanding finance. We check for the VAT status, and I think all that's going to be covered later. We also, not all brokers do this, but as an ABIA member, we do. So we carry out identity checks to comply with anti-money laundering regulations. And that doesn't just mean turning up in the office and showing us your driving license. We actually use an external agency, and we put all the ID through the agency, and they check official databases, they scan individuals for any sanctions, or to see whether the person is politically exposed. And that just gives peace of mind and reassurance that there's no criminal activity or fraud or anything, and obviously protects the seller and the buyer. The other thing a broker does, which we've just talked about, is checking proof of funds to make sure that the buyer actually does have the funds and is not just sort of messing the vendor about. We also produce legal documentation. So again, being a member of an association, we have legal contracts that have been drawn up by marine lawyers. And so we produce contracts to the buyer and the seller once an offer has been accepted. And we'll also produce a bill of sale and I think we'll talk about that later when we get down to the completion stage. So a good broker will do all your documentation for you. They'll keep your funds secure in a client account, and that must be totally separate to trading monies. And I think one of the important things is a broker is impartial. I know they are working for the vendor. The vendor pays the fee to sell the boat, but the broker is impartial, and they are there to negotiate between both parties and make sure that everything runs smoothly for both parties. The other good thing about a broker is that we price boats day in, day out. We kind of know the market, and we like to think that we price boats realistically, whereas with a private sale, sometimes the pricing can be a bit off. Most brokers can also help not just with the sale and the purchase, but where we can be quite informative lot, and we can help with moorings. We can help sort of advise you with insurance, license, boat transport if you either by canal or by road. So we can be of use to people.
But on top of all of that, you guys have been to see the boat. You've drawn up the spec, so you know the boat exists.
Yeah.
It's not like it's up at just a listing on eBay that someone can go and bid on that they've never seen before. You guys have usually physically seen it. You've physically seen paperwork and things like that.
Yeah.
So you know it exists, and a buyer can protect themselves really from scams in that sort of way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we go out and look at the boat, and we take all the photos and the technical detail. We do sales particulars. So yeah, the buyer can be assured that they are buying a boat that is actually there, and all the protection is in place to make that purchase safe.
And the questions just come in. Do brokers charge for their service? Well, I assume you do.
Yes, we do. We don't do it for free. Yeah, all brokers charge. So the seller pays the fee, and the brokers charge varying different rates. I think the inland guys charge a bit less than the coastal brokers, but yes, we do charge a fee because there's a lot of work involved in selling a boat.
Thank you very much, Emma. So you now have an idea of your budget. You've talked to a broker. It's now time for one of the most exciting parts of the whole process, the bit where you're finally going to get out, touch, feel, see, look at boats. This is your opportunity to explore different options, get a feel for various layouts, and imagine yourself using the boat, actually being out on the cut, cruising along, chilled out with a glass of something sparkling, and that can be a soft drink, as you sit there and drift along the canals. Whilst it's easy to be swayed by first impressions, it's important to look beyond the surface to assess the boat's condition, practicality, and suitability for your lifestyle. So, Emma, can you tell us, give us some ideas of what to look for during viewings and how to spot potential issues?
Yeah, definitely. The first thing I'll say is when you're sort of thinking about buying a boat is go and look at as many as you can. Most brokers are really happy to show you around. That most of the larger brokers have lots of boats on site. Go and look at as many as you can, and you'll probably have a list that you've written of things that you think you want, and as you start looking at boats, your list will change, and you may actually find yourself buying a boat that is completely opposite to what's on your list. So don't be surprised if that happens. But what I will say is when you are looking at boats, try and be practical. Don't just look at the pretty things, the curtains and the, oh, this is nice, that's nice. You want to have a good old rummage. You want to look around the windows, the doors, the side doors, hatches, mushrooms, check for water staining. It's very common for boats to have water staining, but you want to have a look for that. Walk along the outside, check the external paintwork. Is the paint flaky? Is it rust? Is there rust coming through? And you can weigh up whether does it need just a little touch up or does it need a complete repaint, and you can factor that into your budget. They're sort of all general maintenance things. Check the engine bay is dry. Is it clean? Look in the gas locker. Is it rammed full of stuff, or is it nice and clean and not rusty in the bottom? And don't be afraid to have a look in all these areas. And the other thing, don't be afraid to ask questions. Nothing is too silly. We've heard it all. Ask about the maintenance history. So has the boat been regularly blacked? Has the hull ever been grip blasted? Is the hull bitumen or 2-pack? Ask about the engine servicing. How often has it been serviced? Is there any records to back it up? Is there a lot of boat owners keep boat logs on board showing, they like to keep a log of their journeys. And again, that backs up the engine hours. They're all important questions to ask because you can start to build up a picture of a boat, and you can work out how well cared it's been. And a boat that's been looked after and well maintained might be less problematic at survey time. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Also ask questions about the sales process. So the terms and conditions. So every broker works a little bit differently. An important question to ask is, will you get your deposit back if you withdraw from the sale? At ABNB, we do refundable deposits, but other brokers are different. So that's an important question because I often see online, my survey's not great. I'm going to want to pull out of my boat, but the broker's keeping my deposit. How dare they? Well, ask these questions before you put your offer in. Find out what the time scales. Brokers work on time scales as well, and again, they're all different. So you need to make sure that you ask these questions and you can be well informed when you're making offers on boats. The other lasting question that you should ask is there any legal paperwork for me to sign? And if the answer's no, you might want to question why. Does that help?
Brilliant, thank you, Emma. And
Ben might have some more bits.
I was going to say, Ben, I think Emma's covered most of everything, but is there anything from a surveyor's perspective that you
I'm
might
actually
want to
thinking of subscribing her to the YDSA as a surveyor because I think she's got it all. But no, I mean, I think you're really right about that. I mean, one of the things you haven't talked about is the different transom arrangements that may suit different people, from like the trad, the semi-trad, and the cruiser stern. They all have advantages and disadvantages depending on what you're planning to do with the boat. If you've got a large family, I don't think I'd suggest buying a trad because you'll never get everyone at the back end of the boat there. semi-trad sometimes works well with smaller children, doesn't it? You know, if you've got young children, you can put them in that rear cockpit area with the bench and the side plates are up high, and they can enjoy the trip, but they're not in your way too much. And again, if you're living on board a boat for a period of time, I think having pram hoods over a cruiser stern is really great for digging into winter. But you know, I think the thing you've said right at the start is you'll start looking at one boat, and by the time you've actually worked out what is the right boat, you'll end up buying a totally different boat. And the other thing is, I don't even dare use that word bow thrusters, because some people will shoot me if I said, so you need a bow thruster. But again, on some systems, if your boat is a certain length and you've never used a boat before, it can be a nice little help, get me out of jail free card, you know. But it's like everything else. It's the more you get confident, you know, the more you'll get an idea. And I think, do you think there's a period where some people buy a boat for 2 or 3 years and then realise this is what they now need, and then they come back to you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, and that's why it's important to do your research. It's a big expense and a you know, yeah, you've really got to do your research and look at lots of boats. Don't just fall in love with the first one. And yeah, like you've said, they're all slightly different and to suit different circumstances and families and yeah, just do your research.
And even the arrangements internally can be a massively big headache, because some people love the lounge at the front end of the boat, and other people prefer the bedroom at the front end of the boat and the galley or kitchen at the back end. So again, you've really got to find out what you're planning to do with it. And as I say, even if you don't get it right the first time, go and use that boat for a couple of years, enjoy it, and then say, right, now I know what I want.
Yeah.
And I think basically what we can say from all this is, and please everybody, if you've not done this before, there is no such thing as a stupid question. You can guarantee that if you're thinking it, 20, 30, 40, however many people have thought of it beforehand. So it's no such thing as a silly question. Don't feel intimidated by anything. Just ask the questions that make you feel comfortable through the whole process. So we've now gone through the process of looking at every boat on the inland waterways that we can. We've found the one we love. It's the one. It's shiny. You wake up at night in a cold sweat thinking about how beautiful this thing is. And it's ticking all the boxes. It's the right price. And it's the boat that not only feels right, but meets every requirement in size, layout, and condition. And the boat that matches what you want to use it for, whether that's weekend cruising as a couple or full-time living with a family and a dog, or a cat, if you like cats or anything. So what next? The next step is to start the ball rolling on your finance arrangements. You've looked in your bank account. There's a little in there that can sort of get you started on the process. But if you're using finance to purchase the rest of it, you need to start making the necessary arrangements early. Because that not only speeds up the purchasing process, but also puts you in the best possible position when it comes to making an offer. So to take us forward on the whole arranging finance, I'm going to pass you over to Stuart.
Thank you, Paul. So whilst finance this evening has appeared in the bubble number 3, we can actually appear at anywhere in the stage of this journey of trying to find a boat. And probably more often than not, we are approached before our buyer or our customer has actually found the boat that they have already chosen or even made an offer on. So we can be much earlier in this process. We mentioned at the start of the webinar there are options regarding property finance or personal loans, but our area is marine finance. We are the only lender providing secured marine finance loans for people who want to live aboard. The market is really quite restrictive, and it is a very specialist area where we are securing against the boat. And because we're securing against the boat, then we have exactly the same interests as our customer in trying to ensure the boat is right for them, the right value, and the vendor is able to sell it to them. And it helps really if they are working with a broker. So our process really starts with the customer telling us that they've got some funds available to pay as a deposit. We like to see a minimum of 20 we're very happy for you to borrow less than 80%, and we will typically lend over a period of up to 10 years. We do offer shorter periods, obviously, but most people tend to borrow the maximum they can and over the longest period possible. Our process is simple. It usually begins with an online application form that is available on our website, and that helps us then follow through with generating a credit assessment, which will involve speaking to our applicant to get an idea of their individual circumstances, what they're expecting, and whether we can deliver on those expectations. I'd like to think that most of the time that we can do that. Obviously, that's not always going to be the case, and it takes us it takes us a very short process. It just depends how inundated we are with applications, which right now we are, I'm pleased to say, but we would look to try and get back with a decision within 24 hours, just depending where you're at the top of that queue on a Monday or a little bit further down. So a 24-hour turnaround, which is give you an acceptance and an offer, which would be subject to satisfactory ownership documents and a satisfactory surveyor. Where we're working with a reputable broker, then such as AB&B, other brokers are available, then we would expect them to have lots of information about the boat and already know its condition, and would identify very early on whether that boat is going to meet our expectations and our customers' expectations. So we talk a little bit more when the finance is completed further on in this webinar, but if the title documentation and the surveyor gives a thumbs up, then our mortgages would complete. And what our facility enables is that people can make overpayments or indeed settle in full at any time during their finance agreement. So that could literally be within a month or so of taking out those marine mortgages from ourselves. There's no penalty for that. And that really then is when we see the timing issue that people may or may not have in terms of, have they had properties to sell? Have they been waiting for a pension payout? Or if there's been an inheritance come their way, then they might choose to pay off some or all of our boat mortgage. And you know, we look to try and have a very personal and engaging process with our customers along that process.
Questions come in, Stuart. Sorry.
Yeah.
For finance, what are the key factors you assess for somebody who is self-employed but paid as an employee of a limited company? It's a struggle to get a mortgage with any small business, even with a good credit rating, as most look deeply at balance sheets, etc. What is more important, a balance sheet or recent performance of P&L?
So that question, I think it's just disappeared. If you could leave it up there, because I was using some of that question to prompt. Sorry, I've got it now, Paul. So the question says self-employed but paid as an employee. So I think I understand what that question means. If you're self-employed as a sole trader, or you're a director that owns your own business, then we still view that applicant as an individual. If typically their money is kept within the business, so their own personal finances might look minimalistic, shall we say, but the business is thriving and can be assessed from bank statements, which is what we look at more than financial records, then we will effectively look at the business and the individual combined, and providing there is combined affordability, which really means that there is sufficient funds to repay us and not create them financial stress, then we're less concerned about balance sheet, a little bit about P&L, to be honest, because they do go hand in hand. But that would be our main focus. Credit rating, yes, we do want to see that bills are paid on their due dates. But I hope that answers the question in terms of we're focused more on income that needs to be evidenced in bank statements. If it's cash, then that makes life a little more difficult for us and would probably fall below our hurdle. But providing the funds are evidenced, and we speak to everybody about this, and we see some people who have their business is seasonal or fluctuates. We'll work with you and talk to you and do our best to understand it. And we want to help you get the boat that you're wanting.
Just another one that's coming from Justin. Do you have a criteria for a surveyor that you accept as part of the finance deal, or is it just customer's choice, or do you have input into which surveyor they choose?
Our offers go out with a requirement for a satisfactory survey and valuation from a surveyor that is a member of either the YDSA or the IIMS, and links to those two websites are accompanied on our finance offer. There are other surveyors memberships. I'm not quite too sure they're all of that standard. If someone's different to that, then we'd probably want to look into it and check it out as to what that is.
And I suppose if they're IIMS or YDSA, you know that one they've worked in the past, they've got the right insurances in place, and they've got the backing of a body behind them, haven't they?
One for Ben, I guess.
Yeah. So with people are talking all acronyms here. So there's Yacht Designers and Surveyors Association. IIMS is International Institute of Marine Surveyors. There is another one, which is the SCMS, which is the Society of Consulting Engineers. But what you will find is there are members that cross over at least one of those memberships. And again, I don't know, do you work on levels of membership, Stuart? Because both IMS and YDSA do have an entry level as an affiliate, which isn't always someone who's been surveying for more than 3 years. So do you accept them?
I probably don't know enough about the level of surveying membership that you do, Ben. And whilst we do see AFIL appear on some of the surveyors' qualifications, if the survey is of what we would think as a quality standard, which seems to be covering the boat in detail, as opposed to a very simple broad brush copy and paste one-pager, then it's probably more of how the survey's been written that we would take notice of.
But you would want a full survey, wouldn't you? Because an awful lot of surveyors I see just purely do a hull survey and then they're gone. And they haven't even looked inside the boat or run the engine.
Well, yeah, well, but we require, sorry, you're picking me up on a point that I perhaps should have mentioned, that if we're financing a used boat, we do require it to have a boat safety certificate. So for it to have a boat safety certificate, then the surveyor is required to go and review the systems that exist within that boat. And there are a varying standard that we see. So if it fails BS or the BSS boat safety, then we require that boat to be put right. And that's before we would finance it and before our customer purchases it. So I think that's probably unusual for most people thinking about finance, because it's not just here's some money, go and spend it on a boat. We lean heavily on the broker, on the surveyor, and we engage quite closely with the customer, because the person buying these boats often doesn't understand what the survey has written, including us, and that might need an investigation to say, well, what do they mean by this? How serious is that issue? What would it cost to put right? And so we try and look after our customers' interests, which are the same as ours, and we will engage with the other parties And
again, this is why
it can be
some
quite,
surveyors.
yeah, it can be quite, there's quite a lot of toing and froing. It's not just necessarily one phone call, including bow thrusters that don't work, which we've just agreed that weren't necessary, actually.
Not always, but also, but the point I'm coming back to is the fact that this is why this is such an important cycle of what Paul has got together tonight, because a lot of brokers will put a list of their surveyors.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of those surveyors aren't actually a member of any association. So do your homework.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always quite chuffed sometimes when I'm not on a list, and I'm also quite chuffed when I am on a list. But the other point from a finance is the fact that you're relying on the surveyor to look at that boat and say, yes, it's fit for purpose, because you've got an interest in it of a value, which again, you need to make sure is insured at some point as well, don't you?
Yep, and indeed, you know, the person buying that boat needs to know it's not going to sink tomorrow. I've just I'm being asked some direct questions here, which were, what's a typical interest rate? So our typical interest rates are anything between 14 and 16% as an APR, and that's whether it's bridging loans or 10-year terms. But because there is no penalty to settle, then what's typically seen as you end up paying all the interest that's outstanding when you, so if you've got 10 years worth of interest, you're looking at double the amount of the loan. If you settle after year one, you don't pay 10 years worth of interest. You only pay the interest up until the point that you choose to settle it. So that makes a massive difference when comparing our facilities, even with property mortgages where you get a fixed rate for a period of time. If you try and settle or reduce that, I think you're allowed a certain amount of repayment. But if it's more than that, then you'll pay interest penalties, and we don't get involved in them.
And just another interesting question that's come in. So if a surveyor makes recommendations for work to be completed, do you then need to get another survey to show the works have been done before giving finance, or do you give finance just noting that the works need to be done?
It depends on what that work is. And it depends who's doing the work. So again, some of the brokers that we work with might well have surveyors that they know, or might even have their own workshops. So depending on what the work is, confirmation from the broker and maybe an invoice that's been paid to show that that work's been done might suffice. If it's a boat safety certificate, then it would need to be resurveyed to be able to issue that boat safety certificate. And if it was work that we thought was fairly serious, which obviously safety is probably at the top of that, but also to protect the integrity of the boat, then we certainly might choose to have that boat resurveyed. But you then start to go into the territory. If you don't do that, should you be buying that boat in the first place?
Very true. Very true. Okay. And now we move on to the all-important documentation, because unfortunately there are cases where buyers have purchased boats from sellers who weren't the rightful owners. And unlike property purchases where ownership and financial interest is officially registered, there is currently no central register for boat ownership. So how do you check that the vendor is able to sell the boat that our customer is buying? Emma, Stuart?
Well, I suppose the first thing that brokers look for is the title documentation. And again, every broker works differently, but we ask for at least 5 years clear title. And we don't just gather the documents and just stick them in a folder. We do actually look at them, and we check to make sure that the names match in and go back historically, so the transfer of ownership is transferred correctly each time. There's often the common problems is in a relationship breakdown, and there'll be 2 names on the bill of sale, the previous bill of sale, but there's only one person signing the brokerage or the listing agreement. So it puts the broker in a bit of a difficult position, because they have to then question the seller and make sure that there is nobody going to come out the woodwork and say, actually, that boat, you can't sell it. It's, it's mine. I own half of it. So the broker checks all the title documentation to make sure that it can legally be sold. The other thing I think Stuart's already mentioned is a boat safety scheme certificate. So we don't necessarily need a paper copy. Examiners don't necessarily give out paper copies these days. It's they can email a PDF copy, but we will want to see that to make sure that the boat has a valid boat safety scheme certificate. The other thing that we look at is the RCD compliance, which is the Recreational Craft Directive. It's a very grey area. Don't really want to get into it much on this webinar, but basically a second-hand boat can be sold without paperwork. We just need to disclose it to the buyer. But there are lots of different scenarios with the RCD, and a good broker will check all that to make sure that the boat can legally be sold. What else do we check? Outstanding finance. Well, it's really difficult to check that a boat hasn't got any outstanding finance. There's no, unless Stuart tells me differently, there's no way of checking this other than alarm bells might ring if there is no title documentation, no invoices, no nothing. And if a vendor or a seller is saying, "Oh, I've lost it all," that can ring alarm bells, because does a finance company hold all that paperwork? So is there finance on that boat? But a broker will ask the seller to declare all this on a listing agreement. And Stuart, I'm right, aren't I? There is no way of checking other than picking up the phone to you.
You are right. I think probably just to. I saw a question earlier about A, B, and B are the only broker that's listed on ABIA. I think we, as near as we can, as independent here, A, B, and B are exceptional in terms of their ownership documentation and the processes you see in here, because not every broker is as diligent and as thorough in going through these ownership documents. So certainly the British Marine members should be better, but ABIA and is one step up again. So the ownership documents are something that we really take really importantly, obviously. And the only thing I would say about that is that yes, we do look at 5 years, and this is because there's a crossover where the coastal and the ocean boats tend to set a standard. But we also want to see originals, because as a lender, we will hold and keep the original title documents as part of our security. So if they have copies and not originals, then that's alarm bells for us. We see lots of examples where parties have signed documentations. In fact, we've seen one today where the broker signed the sale agreement as the seller, and clearly that's wrong. But there's a level of ignorance that has existed within the inland sector, particularly where historically brokers and buyers have kind of bumbled along somewhat ignorantly and not really been too concerned. Well, it's only now that in the last 10 years where we're trying to do repairs on the ownership documentation, where we almost do an investigation to find out who has owned the boat and when, why the paperwork was wrong. Can we put that paperwork right? Can we confirm that what's been completed incorrectly would suggest that ownership did transfer? So we're looking at historic financial transactions to try and put this right, because at the end of the day, the broker is acting on behalf of the vendor, and it's the vendor who is liable for any mis-selling and misdirection. But in terms of the outstanding finance part of it, then there is no set register. We do use HPI to register our boats, but no one else does on the inland sector. It's very different inland. There historically have been so very few lenders in this marketplace that there are probably 4 finance companies, if they answered the phone, might be able to tell you whether they own that, they financed that boat once. But fortunately, in touch wood, in 15 years now, we've not had any issues regarding false ownership, or at least we've managed to avoid them if they've been present.
I was going to say you've probably more avoided them than actually had them. And I think it's one of the things why we're doing this webinar tonight, more than anything else, is to encourage people to use a broker.
Sorry, Ben.
Because at the end of the day, from an insurance point of view, I've actually been involved before where someone has actually sold a boat to someone and it wasn't even their boat and they've sold it off the towpath. So I do think it's really important that people understand this side of it, of making sure that the person selling the boat is selling it, and the safest way of doing that is through a broker. I always think we miss an opportunity with the Inland Waterways Associations and the other authorities. There's no way that they hold that every boat is licensed. And it's a great shame that there's no way that a broker can ask them for who's paid for the license for the last 4 or 5 years, because that would also give an evidence trail of who.
Yeah, it's part of the evidence trail that we all look at, and I'm sure Emma looks at as well. But
So
I mean,
again, it's really important to keep receipts for all those sort of things. And that's something I always say to people is, no matter how incidental it may seem now, if you've bought the oil and filters for the engine.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we've got firefalls of that. But of course, you know, if there are plenty of private sailboats out there, and if you're buying a private sailboat, then you need to be doing this due diligence yourself,
or use a broker to do. So some brokers we certainly do as well. We offer a service where we will do all the due diligence in a private sale, and we've had it before where the vendor and the buyer split the cost, but a broker will or can overlook or oversee the paperwork side of things. They can even hold the money in their client account. If you know, we can get involved with private sales if need be.
How common is that, Emma?
It's not overly common. I mean, I think I did probably about 2 or 3 last year.
Yeah.
Where I got involved with private
I think
sales.
there are certainly some brokers that you wouldn't want to involve in that.
That's a private conveyance, isn't it? Basically, you're acting as a conveyance.
Yeah.
Which again, I think is a sensible way of doing it, because one of the biggest problems with private sales is people put down quite large lumps of money, sometimes subject to survey.
Yeah.
And are then always worried about actually seeing that money back. So it is something to try and encourage people in that private sales point to actually think about, you know, perhaps asking a broker if they're prepared to do a conveyancing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Of course, the problem comes is they pay that money down, but they don't make it subject to survey, and they haven't done a pre-purchase contract and a sale agreement. So
yeah, so then there's stuff they're going to buy it regardless.
Yeah,
of what I say.
let's not go there.
But buyer beware.
And you know, very pertinent questions just come up. You know, if you're not buying a brokerage boat, what you're buying a new boat, what sort of paperwork would you be looking for then? Is it just an invoice? Is it an invoice and a
conformity?
Yeah, you'll be looking for a declaration of conformity, and you will want 2 declarations of conformities, one from the shell builder and one for the person who fits out the boat, and that's your RCD paperwork. You'll also want an owner's manual, a builder's plaque on the boat, and there should also be the WIN stamped on the transom. But that's pretty rare in the inland waterways, to be honest with you. You're lucky if you get an owner's manual and a bit of a declaration of conformity. But that's what you want from a new build. And then obviously you want a receipt or an invoice from the builder to show that you've bought the boat. Ben, have I missed anything?
No, I mean, the only thing I say to people is if you're thinking about having a new build, do talk to a surveyor, because sometimes the new builder will rattle on and start putting a boat together and ask for stage payments or something, and you've got nothing to prove where they're up to.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not very popular with some builders because I like to see things like weed hatches made a little bit higher than their normal standard production boats, and I like to see the internals blacked out or at least epoxied so that you're preventing things going wrong in the future and making sure they're using proper plywood and not chipboarding before they put all the linings in. So there's lots of things that can get hidden.
Yeah, and I think the problem with the inland waterways is that boat builders can self-declare. They don't have to go through a notified body, so they can just print off a declaration of conformity and tick the boxes to say they've built it to meet certain standards. But actually, certainly some boats that we've had on brokerage, when you look at them, they're not built to the RCD standards. And I would suggest that you get a surveyor who knows about RCD to oversee the build.
And the RCD is a whole other webinar, I think.
It is. It is. Yeah. I said I wasn't going to mention it.
There's a whole alley we can go down
RCD.
later on for that one, but yeah, if there are questions about it later, we'll ask specific questions.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
And just very quickly, last question on this little section is roughly how much is charged for a private sale handling? Is it a fixed fee or percentage wise?
For a private, to get involved in a private sale, it would vary depending on what they want us to do. If they want us to handle the money and check all the paperwork and produce contracts, then you're looking at a larger sum. If they just want us to hold money, then it would be cheaper. So we do it on a depending on what sort of service they want.
Come on, nail it down.
Yeah.
You've now got your finance in place. You've seen the documentation. Everyone's happy with it. It's time for the exciting bit. You're dipping your hand in your pocket. You're going to make an offer, but you're going to make an offer subject to survey because that's always recommended with a second-hand boat purchase. That means that whilst you're ready to proceed with the purchase, it's conditional on the outcome of a professional survey to confirm the boat's condition. We think this step is essential to protect you as a buyer, helping you avoid unexpected repair costs or issues that might not be visible during initial viewings. The surveyors do generally tend to do a lot more in-depth digging into the hull and all that, not digging into the hull, obviously, but digging around trying to find issues. They seem to get into places that us on our viewings don't seem to be able to get to. But just quickly, before we talk more about surveys, tell me, guys, do people tend to offer the asking price straight away, or is it kind of standard to negotiate a little bit?
I would say the majority of people put in an offer. Obviously the vendor wants the asking price, the broker wants the asking price because the more money we make, the more fee we get. And we don't bump up the price to sort of take into account offers. We price it realistically, but most people put in an offer. If the boat's only been on the market a day or a week, the vendor will probably say, no, I want the asking price. But if it's been on the market for a little while, they might be more open to an offer.
And also sometimes, Emma, circumstances are never always fully declared, are they? You never know what personal circumstances are. Sometimes an offer will come along and they'll look at it and think, I don't know about in your own marina where you are, but some marinas work April to April. So in March, for instance, they've got the next year's payment coming along. It certainly happens in the yacht fraternity where certain marinas charge, £8,000-9,000 a year to keep your boat in a marina on the south coast. March comes along and you think, crumbs, I'll take that offer because I haven't got to suddenly find another 10 grand for the boat.
Yeah, a bit different for us because we obviously offer 4 months free moorings as part of the the sales package. So usually they're not paying for a mooring. But yeah, you're right. Things crop up in the family or whatever, and a vendor might say, yeah, actually, I'll accept that offer.
Emma,
So
would
it's
you
not
say
just-
Emma, would you say the market's come back a bit from the immediate post-COVID years where boats are actually going up and selling without negotiation? Are those offers kind of coming back to historically how the market has always operated, would you say?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I would say it's a buyer's market at the moment. Yeah, definitely. But yes, prices I think have stabilised now, and that they're where they should be.
And as a broker with a second-hand boat purchase, do you always recommend the customer gets a survey?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, without doubt, we would say have a survey, even on a new boat. Maybe not a survey, but we would suggest that they have a boat safety scheme examination. So some people do have surveys on new boats, but yeah, we would always say have a survey and choose your surveyor wisely. And I think Ben mentioned earlier, and certainly part of our code of practice is that surveyors must be a member of a recognised surveyors association to survey any of our boats. So yes, have a survey.
Just to catch you, Emma, with the one that Ben got me, do
Yeah.
you make a distinction between the membership level that your surveyors have?
No, so long as they're, I mean, we tend to certainly our list, if you, our surveyors recommend our list, are mainly surveyors that are YDSA surveyors, and
But full membership though?
no, any membership, yeah, but they need to be a member of the YDSA or IMS, to carry out a survey for one of our brokerage boats.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've made your offer. The broker has done their bit. They've negotiated with the vendor, beaten him down a little bit on price, beaten him up a little bit on price. I don't know, whichever way you really want to go. So anyway, eventually the offer's accepted. Obviously, the next step is to arrange this survey. So who better to pass you on to now than our resident surveyor, Mr. Sutcliffe Davis?
Yes, thank you for that one. I think the first thing is I want to say really is if you're going to employ a surveyor, the first question you don't want to be saying to him on the telephone is, I've offered too much and I want to lose at least £5,000. Okay, I'm not here to be your chipping tool. I think it's really important to understand what surveyor should be. It should be an objective inspection of the vessel. And it should give you a factual report at the end of it. And I do think sometimes, I mean, in some of the courses I go to and get involved with, especially in the ABIA and British Marine training, they call me the sales prevention officer. And it's not intentional. It's because at the end of the day, sometimes people get very scared at how surveyor provides his report. It's that negative that it really, can make people run a mile. Should you be there at the purchase? Well, personally, my uncle and myself, we've always been happy to have a client coming round. I do find it very hard when the seller, the client, his mother-in-law, his wife, 3 children and a dog are all there, because that really can distract. So I do say to people, come along, but just keep it simple and sensible. And sometimes the reactions of things you find can not really be helpful either. But so, I mean, a surveyor should be looking at the boat out of the water. I know that some yards don't wash boats off because owners are very unhappy to have their boats jet washed off just after spending 3,000 or 4,000 on blacking. But people have got to understand, if you're selling the boat, that if there's something you can see that's wrong under that blacking, you should be able to take it off without causing too much grief. Other yards I go to will always insist on washing the boat off in their yard as part of it. If you go to Europe, most boat yards that I go to with the canal system in France, for instance, where you do barges, the broker organises the boat to go into dry dock, be jet washed off, surveyed, spots cleaned back for ultrasound, and then 2 coats of epoxy to be applied after the survey. And that survey will cost nearly £7,000 or £8,000 from the boatyard just for the survey point. So I think in the UK we get away quite lightly with hoiking the boat out of the water and washing it off. What I don't like doing is walking around in 2.5 foot of nice soft mud. And I do also like to be able to see the bottom of the boat. And again, I will quite often say to people before they book us, oh, you know, we've got a dry dock here, blah, blah, blah. Great. How much air height have you got when the boat is set down? And all these things matter because at the end of the day, the more we can see as a surveyor, the more you know about your boat. If I say the boat was sat in nearly 1.5 inches of water, so I couldn't see the base plate, there could be 10,000 plus pounds wrong with the base plate, which no one can see. So be very careful about it. I mean, for instance, on a base plate, most narrow boats and wide beams have plates in sections, and you would not believe how often those sections haven't been welded inside and out. So that's something to look at. A surveyor wants to look at the welding, the seam welds, the side plating, the counter, the swim arrangements, and how the weed hatch is fitted. Has it got a bow thruster? We've all said about that one, but I have had some that are stern thrusters. How are they powered? You know, sometimes they're batteries. There are some out there that even use hydraulic motors now. So there's all these sort of things you need to find out about and make sure they work. Propellers, quite often you'd be amazed how many times you turn up and the propeller is literally hanging on with half a shopping trolley wrapped around it. And everyone said, I didn't think it was running properly. Rudders, you know, make sure that the rudder is actually attached top and bottom and the bearings are okay. And it's not bent. And again, this comes back to the new boat thing. You can have a brand new boat that's just been chugged halfway down the system, caught one lock seal, and suddenly you've got a bent rudder blade and a skeg. So it is important to have these boats out of the water and check them. Classic ones that I quite regularly find are the propellers are hanging on and the nut has never been seized. That's a classic one. And then, as Emma talked about earlier, in your looking at a boat, do be inquisitive. Take the rose-tinted glasses off. Look at things like the gas lockers, where they are and how they run. Look at the age of the hoses. I actually did a boat the other day which had 1998 gas hoses on it. That has had how many boat safety certificates? It's been sold about 4 times, and not one person has said, shall we change those hoses in that time? The aft deck arrangements we talked about, the differences of how you get into to service things like the weed hatch, the swims, where the batteries are placed, condition of the batteries, how old are the batteries? Again, constant cruiser, the batteries will have been cycled beautifully, whereas a boat that's been sat in the marina for 3 years and hasn't gone anywhere will have cooked that set of batteries to 1/8 of their life. But the moment you unplug it, you have no power. Have you seen the boat with all the power on without the shore power on? Because it means that it's literally coming through the battery charger, which isn't a healthy thing to do. So all those things. And then obviously a surveyor, as I was saying earlier, for me, I don't do hull surveys unless it's for the owner. So a pre-purchase would be inside and out, because one of the most important things to look at is the freeboard of discharges, hoses, how they're attached. You know, it's if you have a surveyor and he's on your boat for less than 4 hours, then I don't think he's looked at enough. That's a good benchmark. Stoves and heaters and gas, it's all things. And the other classic one is, and I've done this so many times, I've come on board a boat and I've walked up through it and said, floorboards are rotten. Yeah, we thought there was a bit of a bounce in the floor here. Well, why weren't you inquisitive at the time of pre-purchase? Because sometimes, depending on whether the floorboards are rotten, that could mean half the internal accommodation needs stripping out, which sometimes can actually be 15, 20, 30,000 pounds. Take all that out to redo the cabin sole, the floor, as you guys would call it. So do have a proper look and engage a surveyor. Don't use him as your chipping tool. And as Paul said right at the start there, that photograph there is still off one of my YouTube things. My YouTube is the Marine Surveyor's Notebook, and I quite happily share it around to people to try and help them not waste money on a surveyor until you're ready to buy. How's that?
I mean, thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, a couple of questions that have come in is there a directory of surveyors? I think we've kind of covered this off by going onto the YDSA website or the IIMS
so if you go
website.
So if you go to the YDSA or the IIMS or SCMS, which I know some of you don't talk about, but the SCMS is actually one of the older associations along with the YDSA. quite a few members of the YDSA are members of SCMS because of the commercial coding side of the boats. But yes, they all have directories of where surveyors are. But Google's always a good one as well, of typing in YDSA surveyor and put an area, and they will often pop up as well. But again, ask the brokers, because they have people they know. And it's not always the fact that that broker is in bed with that surveyor. It's the fact that they know that they're not going to waste their time of you paying a lot of money for a survey, have the boat lifted out of the water, and then they say, I've had it before. I've had it with you guys in insurance before, where you've had a survey presented to you and you've said, I'm sorry, this doesn't cover everything we expected to cover to insure it. So it's really important, it really is important.
I think sorry, I was just going to say, Ben, that the trouble is the social media and that, don't trust a broker's list, and perhaps some brokers aren't as trustworthy, but I don't know. But you've got to remember, brokers see a lot of survey reports over their desk, and they do know the better ones to the not so good ones. And I think it's wrong to say don't trust a broker, don't trust a broker's list.
Well, one thing you can always do, and I'm amazed how many people don't ask for it, is ask for a sample survey report.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. The number of times I say to people, do you want to see a couple of one of my surveys? Because I see surveyors' reports from insurance claims after the boats have been sunk, where people have done stupid things to them, or the bad weather's just caught them out, or the locks have caught them out. And some of the survey reports, frankly, when they tell me they paid £800 or £900 for it, and I look at my report and think, well, I only charged 900 and something odd quid, and I look at the two and I think, there's no information on here. And again, ask how often the surveyor does a survey. Some of them are out every day. I know one or two people who reckon they can do 2 surveys a day. Well, I struggle to do 2 a week properly, and I wouldn't want to do more than 2 a week.
Yeah, and the other important thing, certainly for the inland waterways, is make sure your surveyor that you choose knows about steel narrowboats and isn't a coastal surveyor. The amount of times we've had surveys that from a coastal surveyor, and they just don't know narrowboats, and ultimately it ends up normally with that purchaser walking away from the boat of their dreams because the surveyor has not reported well. So
I think well's a good word. Hasn't reported well.
Yeah, I couldn't think how to word it.
No. But you're absolutely bang on. I mean, I'm probably one of the few exceptions, because I've done inland waterways all my life, and I've also done coastal, and I do MCA coded boats. But I've done an awful lot of steel boats since 1974. So it is important, and the understandings of it. But the fundamental things is making sure that boat is in a presented condition that can actually be surveyed.
And one of the other considerations, obviously, if you've got a surveyor's list from a local broker like Emma, they're gonna pick local surveyors, and I suppose surveyors nearer to the area there's gonna be less travel costs involved and things like that.
It is sometimes the case, although I am actually quite surprised sometimes that people tell me that I've travelled 3 hours and I'm actually cheaper than some of the local ones. It's a lot of it's down to demand, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, very much so. Every surveyor has a sort of different pricing structure, I suppose. So yeah, there may be ones who are willing to travel further for and maybe include it into the price of their survey. And how much? It's the $1 million question. So how much does a survey cost?
Well, to be honest with you, I've already said, I tend to work on around about the 950-ish, depending on where the boat is. Because it's a 2-day job. It's 1 day at the boat, and it's 1 day at least writing it. And what a lot of people forget is the professional indemnity insurance for people like myself runs into quite a few thousand. And I always hate the fact that people think they can use us as their get out. They're almost like a warranty. We're not really should be treated like a warranty, but sometimes I'm aware that people try to use surveyors as warranties. But it's also down to the experience levels and membership levels as well. you know, so it is important. But ask people, you know, have you done many surveys? Can I see a couple of surveys, sample reports? It becomes patently obvious when you start looking at some of the survey reports how different they are. Some of them are literally one-liners. I've inspected the hull and it was considered okay. That's not enough.
No, and you know, I think people have to understand that a survey report is a statement of facts. It's not there to guide you one way, whether to buy the boat, whether
Not a sales
to buy the
brochure.
boat, whether to renegotiate, whether to do this. A survey report is a statement of facts. It's not designed to beat people up. It's a guide for ongoing maintenance. It's so
There's
much.
lots of things, but it's not
Yeah.
a sales brochure.
No.
And
No.
too often I see survey reports with more photographs than actual written word. And again, they are not surveys, they're just a sales brochure.
And
Probably going to be very unpopular with many surveyors tonight, but there we are.
and a question for you, Emma. Are boats
Yeah.
sometimes sold with a boat survey already in place? And if so, how trustworthy, I suppose, or how
Yeah.
that survey?
Yes, boats do sometimes. So some boat owners will have a survey before they put it on brokerage. I'm in two minds about that. Yes, it can be a bit of a bit of a nice sort of selling point because a buyer can read the report, but the majority of buyers will have their own survey anyway, regardless of whether the sellers had a survey, and also, yeah, I mean, Ben,
There are test cases out there where people have sold a survey with the
yeah,
boat they're selling, and it doesn't stand up well for transfer if it's 3 or 4 months
no,
down the line and the boat's been moved and something's got damaged, and then they find this damage and then they try and blame the surveyor and the
the
broker.
surveyor, yeah, I'm not keen on it, to be honest with you.
There's also
Yeah,
there's also ones where there's reported pitting, and then the next thing is the boat has gone in for a very thick blacking. I've even had boats before now where they've actually used almost like a plastic padding to try and hide some of those things before they blacked, and it's all fallen out when you've used a hammer, which is why, again, if your surveyor is only using ultrasound and doesn't actually wield a hammer at the boat, be really worried, because 9 times out of 10 that's when you start finding all the filler that's been chucked in.
But and a survey report in itself is not just there for the sort of for the benefit of the buyer. Well, it is there for the benefit of the buyer, but people like Stuart, the finance company, and dare I say it, us as the insurance company will probably want to see it as well. So there's many sort of many people who will need sight of this this survey report, and that's kind of where we move on to the insurance section. Which I really do promise you, I'm not trying to shoehorn any sort of sales pitch in here, just because, well, we sell insurance, but there is a little bit of extra detail we need to go into for this. So firstly, legally, you do not need insurance. However, if you're on CRT or EA Waters, they do require a minimum of third-party insurance to get so you can get your canal license, and you need a canal license for the majority of the waterways, or river license. But you shouldn't just consider whether it's a legal requirement. You should ask yourself the question: can you afford to lose your boat? In the grand scheme of things, your insurance premium is not the most expensive part of this process. So what should you look for when you're going into your insurance? You should look for where you should look for whether they cover how you're going to use your boat. Are you a continuous cruiser? Are you moored in a marina? If you're moored in a marina, does your insurance company cover you for wreck recovery, which they should do on most fully comp policies, but also on third-party policies is a mixed bag as to whether they cover them or not, whether wreck recovery is covered in that or not. If you're living on board, do you need contents insurance? If so, how much? Does the insurance policy is an agreed value or a market value policy? Those are quite important. Agreed value is where the value is set at the beginning of the policy and you pay your premium based on that. And then claims are based around that. Whereas a market value one is where It's based on a value of the vessel, and then if your claim comes in 2 to 3 years' time, if the value of that vessel has changed, then so can the claim payout sort of thing. The big question: when does an insurer ask for a survey? I can only answer for Haven here, but when it comes to canal boats, inland waterways, we generally we've set the benchmark at sort of 40 years old. So if it's under 40 years old, we won't always ask for a survey. There will be times when we will. So this is a guideline. There could be times when someone is trying to buy a 76-foot narrowboat for £5,000. You're probably going to get asked for a survey on that one because there's a big mismatch in there. So we kind of keep looking at each one on an individual basis. But as a benchmark, 40 years. Except a Dutch barge. If you're going to buy a Dutch barge, you need to have it surveyed every 7 years. Steel thickness, always a good question. We are very much guided by the surveyor on this sort of thing, but a rough sort of ballpark figure. If it's less than 4 mil thick, your insurance company might just question that a little bit as well. Always read conditions and exclusions. They're the big things, because they're the bits that kind of a lot of people miss. You know, some conditions can be they may require that certain equipment is locked away. If you've got a bike on board, they don't want you sort of leaving it on the top overnight, and then claiming for it when it was stolen and it wasn't locked down. Other conditions: work identified by the surveyor. If Ben's survey comes up with something that needs to be fixed that makes the boat not seaworthy, that's the wrong word, riverworthy, canal-worthy. Start, Ben. And then if he mentions something and then a claim arises which can be put down to the fact that wasn't repaired, are you covered?
You need to be aware
lithium batteries are my favorite subject. There are so many things about lithium batteries. We've done a webinar on it before, back in last year. But basically, if your boat starts with lead acid battery and you upgrade to lithium ion, you will need to inform your insurance company that you've done that. If you then change it to have an electric motor on board, and I think even if it's just the electric battery update, you might need to get I'm going to get this acronym wrong, PCA.
Yeah, it's a major craft conversion. So
yes, because it's considered a major change in what you're doing in that vessel. Sorry, thank you. So again, wear and tear is not covered. This insurance policy is not a maintenance contract. If you don't upkeep your boat in the way that keeps it going along the river, then it's not. Then in a lot of ways, it might not be an insurance problem. Claims wise, it's really, in event of any claim, we always recommend that you act as though uninsured. Get your boat to safety, get yourself to safety, make sure that everybody on board is safe before you do anything. Make sure the boat can be moved if you need to, or can be taken to a safe place. And then call your insurance company and register that claim with them. Log burners, if professionally installed, they're okay. Again, lithium batteries, if they're professionally installed, they should be okay, and they shouldn't have any issues with them. But always check the value of your wreck recovery amount as well, because you don't want to be left out of pocket, and lifting boats out of sunk boats out of marines can be quite an expensive thing. Someone's asked a question: is insurance sold by the foot, or is it bespoke depending on? Oh, yes, it's bespoke depending on many factors, because many insurance companies will deal with coastal boats and inland boats as well. There's lots of factors involved. There's age of vessel, experience of crew, where you keep it. If you keep it into a marina, a lot of insurance companies will offer a discount for that. If you're continuous cruising, yes, that's a factor as well. What type of engine it's got, how old it is, all sorts of factors that are into our pricing matrix for that one. Anything I've missed on insurance?
Security. If you have them in a marina, do you give them a little bit of discount, or doesn't that work on the system?
Because marinas are deemed to be safer for boats to be kept when left alone, then yes, there is generally a discount for people who keep their boats in marina.
Yeah. And the other one that people need to be aware of is if they're trying to earn an income off the boat, i.e. like doing Airbnb when you're not on board, you need to declare that as well.
La 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 la. Yeah, no. Airbnb, no, a lot of insurers won't a lot of insurers won't touch it. There are a few insurers who do limited Airbnb usage, and they all have all sorts of exciting things in it, like you're not allowed to leave the keys on board the engine and the engine, so they can start the engine and all sorts of things. So yeah, Airbnb is a totally different subject. It can be done, but it's not the easiest, and there are specialist insurers who'll deal with that.
Good. I'm glad I throw curveballs to everyone tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Hang on, sorry, questions coming. Is a boat classed as in a marina if you go cruising regularly, i.e. residential 12 months? Yes, it is. Yeah, if your permanent base of the boat is in a marina, then it is a marina berth. You can go out cruising for really long periods of time, but your permanent base is back in that marina.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good question.
Very good question. God, get them all today. Right, now you're almost ready to complete. You just need to press go on the finance. So what do I have to do to get you to release that lovely moolah, Stuart?
So following the fact that we're satisfied with the survey Ben's just written and the title documents that we've seen are all in order, we will then generate a finance document, which is confirming the terms that we've agreed with our customer. And those tend to be e-signed at the moment. So that's literally press of a button and it's done. We will get from the broker a closing statement. So it will confirm the price of the vessel that's been agreed and the loan amount that we're making, the balance being the deposit that will need to have been paid to the broker. And then providing that valid BSS is available, we're in a position then to pay the balance of the money that we're lending to the broker, if there's a broker involved, or if it is a private sale, then we'll pay the balance of that to the vendor. And that's it. Sorry, I didn't cover the insurance part, did I, after all that? So yes, we do require, it says all risk insurance here, is fully comp as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
and we do.
Yeah, all risks is just the marine version of it.
Okay, so all risk insurance with Pro Marine Finance noted as having a financial interest in the vessel. We will not accept third party only in insurance. Yeah, press the button and you've got yourself a boat. Happy days.
And then, so we're now moving on to the final stages. You'll all be pleased to hear. But here is kind of a list of the next slide is a list of sort of what you need to make sure everything's in place for this final check. So the funds are in place. You transferred the funds. You've got your title paperwork. You've got the bill of sale that transfers title to you. Your insurance is in place. You've got your mooring. You've got your license. That leaves just one last thing that you need to do. And it's the moment when all your planning, searching, and careful decision-making pays off. Everything's finalized. It's time to step aboard, put the kettle on, pop open the champagne, and then time to celebrate that you now own a lovely narrowboat. So thank you all for listening to all that so far. We'll move on to the Q&A. We've had loads of questions coming in, which is really exciting. We'll start off. Start off the top with Michael. What is the approx duration, assuming no survey issues, from offer to complete sale?
I think a lot of times it depends on the surveyor, doesn't it? I mean, I generally tend to work on a 2 to 3 week window. I always say to people, if you can get a surveyor tomorrow, then there's a question why you want to ask that question. But generally, about 2.5 weeks. I mean, most brokers put a 14-day completion clause on, don't you? Unless you mitigate the fact the surveyor is really busy, and there are times of the year when we are ridiculously busy.
Yeah, I think every broker is different, but our timescales are that you're allowed 5 weeks, because we know that getting a surveyor can, especially in summer months when it's really busy, you could be waiting 3 weeks for a surveyor. And you know, we don't want to force you to use a surveyor that you don't want to use. So yeah, 5 weeks is our sort of from offer to completion.
And of course, the surveyor has to fit in with the lift out wherever that's going to take place. That's not always straightforward.
Oh,
Yeah.
and that leads me nicely.
That in some areas is a nightmare. I mean, certainly on the Avon and Kennet, you can be talking 6 to 8 weeks in some places, and some dry docks are 3 months.
And that leads me on nicely to the next question. Who organises the lift out? Is it the broker, or is it the vendor, or is it the purchaser? Who does that? Or the surveyor for that matter?
Well, we would coordinate everything. So we ask the buyers to select their surveyor, and then we will get the dock availability and dates from the surveyor and try and tie it all together.
And without wanting to put too much on a point there, another great reason to use a broker, because all that stress is taken away. You're not phoning up 3 different yards trying to get a lift.
I know, yeah.
And from a surveying point of view, trust me, it saves an awful lot of 5-way conversations.
I'm waiting for Stuart to roll his eyes at this next question. If you go through a broker, do you still need to employ a solicitor in the same way as when you buy a house?
Well, very rarely do we get involved in using solicitors in where we're financing boats. I think the solicitors tend to be more commonly used on the larger ocean boat purchases. Possibly might be useful if you're contracting with a new boat builder to review the contract. But even there, I can't think of any occasion where we've worked with solicitors inland or ocean, with the exception of where there's a foreign ownership involved in a coastal or ocean boat. And that actually, that might well also happen on one inland boat that was Netherlands on a Dutch barge. But generally, solicitors aren't required. If they did, you'd probably never sell a boat because they wouldn't be happy with the title documentation.
Yeah,
I was going to say, it is the title, it's the hardest bit.
And again, I'm just going to keep saying it, another reason to use a broker, because they do their due diligence, and they're the ones who are going to who look at all the paperwork.
Yeah, and we kind of do the solicitor role, if you like, because we produce all the legal contracts and draw up all the bill of sale and everything, so and handle the money. So we kind of do the solicitor role as well as the estate agent role as well. We do the lot, us brokers.
You certainly do. And what for you, Ben? If a hull has been overplated, will the vendor tell me? Need I be concerned? And is it more difficult to insure?
Right. I think this is an interesting one, because I'm sure, Emma, you've had boats come out before now and the owner has no knowledge of it being previously overplated.
Yes.
And I think, generally speaking, if a boat is overplated, it's of a lower value, would you not say?
Yes, definitely.
Sorry, Ben, just a quick one. Can you just explain in very briefly what overplating is?
Okay, so basically we have boats pre-1990, 89-ish that would have probably been made out of 6mm base plate and either 5 or 6mm side plate. And obviously, if there's been a lot of electrolytic pitting, galvanic pitting, or anything like that that's affected the hull, sometimes boat builders will love to shove another skin over the whole lot. I've actually had some people who've actually put a 4mm skin over the base plate, which to me seems completely pointless. It does need a complete correction of ballast and everything else. But again, I've had boats before now, and I'm sure you've seen them come out the water where the water runs out the seams because they haven't been done very well. So, yes, the owner should declare to the broker that the boat is overplated, because that will affect the value. It's an interesting one in the sense that if they've got a previous survey, and I have seen them before now, where the surveyor hasn't even spotted the boat was overplated because it was done so well, which is an interesting conversation that was had. But yeah, I'm not a great fan of overplating. I'll be brutally honest. I would rather see boats fill welded and made up wherever possible. A lot of boats, after 20 years, if they've dragged their backside round the system, they'll got wear. Other areas of the system I go to, sometimes on some of the canals north of Oxford, you know, you'll see absolutely no wear on the chines at all because they don't drag themselves around. You go on the Avon and Kennet or the Mon and Breck, where the Mon and Breck's only 2 foot deep, the whole back end of the boat is actually worn away to nothing very quickly. So then you put on sacrificial shoes, or you might even have to put on a skin on the last 10 or 15 foot of the boat. So, you know, but you then need to correct the ballast. But I'm not a great fan of it, and I tend to try and steer away from it as a suggestion unless it's the last resort.
As a matter of course, we won't finance overplated boats.
Very wise.
And that's because of the IIMS report on it as well, which was quite comprehensive.
Well, if your boat was going to see an MCA, from an MCA point of view, you're not allowed to overplate. Use doublers is the common term for it. But on the inland waterway, we just do absolutely everything you can possibly think of to keep the boat going.
Yeah.
I would much rather see sections cut out and replated.
Replated, yeah.
Than overplated. But it's trying to encourage people that the fact there's a difference of £5,000 or £10,000 for a base plate against £35,000 for a complete new bottom. You know, so it is really a hard one to swallow sometimes.
Yeah, and of course, different people in the industry have got different views about it, haven't they?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, next question. We bought a sail away brand new from a boat builder and have been fitting it out ourselves. It is fully lined with all electric, central heating and multi-fuel floored. They haven't fitted a kitchen and there is some carpentry work to complete. Are we required to have a full survey of the boat before we put the boat on the market? Emma, I think that's one for you. Sorry.
Shall I answer that?
Yeah,
yes,
please.
it's not a survey that they will need. They will need to have a post-constructional assessment through a notified body, which in the UK is HPI, Verification Services. There's no 5-year rule, so they can't keep the boat for 5 years and then sell it. They legally have to have a post-constructional assessment before they even use the boat, to be honest, not before they market it.
And it's really important to say to people that this is why it's so important. If you go and start buying your fridges, buying bits and pieces for the boat, you keep all the manuals, because those are all the bits that you need to put in the file, the technical file that you build.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I'm going to just... here we go. This is one for you, Ben. Would a surveyor give a back of a fag packet on expected repair costs for faults found on an ish basis to aid the negotiation afterwards?
I really hate that. Sometimes you obviously, with experience, get an idea of what the local markets are charging for things. But I think, Emma, you know full well as I do that if you're, for instance, you've got an issue that needs dealing with, the most logical thing we always say is go and get the yard to give you a price. Then you as the broker have actually got a fact rather than a fiction, because sometimes it's these sort of things that can actually break a deal between the broker and the seller, because the seller and the buyer are trying to get the best for both of them.
Yeah.
And from the surveyor's point of view, I'm just there to report the facts. You know, yes, we know that blacking a boat can be between 1,500 and 3,000, depending on where you go and everything else. We know that anodes cost a certain amount of money, but when you start coming into things like repairs and plating or replacement windows or something stupid that needs to be done, or engine mounts, it's more sensible to use the broker to say, go and get prices for these. You know, the local company. I mean, where you are, you're very blessed. You've got an extremely good marina there who are really good at doing everything.
Yeah, but yeah,
And then there's no argument about the cost of it, is there?
That's it, yeah.
One for you, Stuart. Would you accept a vendor's survey for finance?
If the vendor was refinancing it, then yes. But if the buyer we would want the survey in the buyer's own name, and that's because when the surveyor issues that survey, they're only liable to the person that's requested and paid him for that survey. So therefore, we would want the survey to be in the buyer's own name. sometimes surveyors agree to assign them. I'm not sure what your view is on that, Ben.
Well, again, I have done assigning of reports, but it's only on the condition that the boat hasn't either left the marine or the hard since I inspected it, and it's less than 3 months. After that, not interested in assigning reports.
I agree. We did learn from experience, but it wasn't to our cost, but it was to our buyer's cost, because it was exactly that situation. But it turns out the boat had been reversed into some lock gates and completely damaged the rudder and goodness knows what else is out the back of the thing. So it was quite an expensive fix because they hadn't done that.
That comes back to exactly what I was saying about new boats. You can have a new boat delivered down the system, you hand it over. Should you have a survey? Well, yes, make sure all the welding's good for a start, because I have seen brand new boats where people have forgotten bits of welding. But also make sure the boat actually arrives undamaged. I mean, before now, I've actually had a brand new boat delivered on a lorry, put in the water, and all the worktops were cracked and 2 of the windows were smashed.
Yeah.
Okay, one for me. Would insurance rates be higher if you're based in a city, e.g. London? Generally, no. Gotta be honest with you. We did the loading, premium loadings for moorings generally a coastal thing, not an inland thing. So not something we should not something we usually load up if just because they're in a city. Adam asked, what is the cost to have the boat out? Rough cost to get a boat lifted out? Anyone?
It varies all around the system. So 200
I was gonna say about 250, 300 for a dry dock for an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
600, £700. But again, it's all on length and the capacity of the dry dock.
Yeah,
you know,
and width.
I mean,
Wide beams are more
costly. Cranes are 1,000 plus.
Next one. When buying, how can we be assured that the seller's the owner?
By going through a broker who does due diligence.
We're going to keep coming back to this. Yeah, okay.
But Emma, would you guarantee that?
I don't think you can guarantee it, can you? All you can do is
So it's a best efforts, right?
Yeah. Well, you've got to do your due diligence and scrutinise that paperwork, and that's
it's
all
never
you can
100%,
do.
is it?
No,
and
I
that's
don't.
part. And that's part of just the quirk of the industry.
Yeah.
And you try and base it on experience.
And why it's
there's no registry or anything.
It's one of the things. There's no V5. There's no registry. There's no anything like that. It is a best efforts. Absolutely, 100%. But
it's why, if you buy a narrowboat from new, it's so essential to keep all that documentation, because it will add value and assurance to the next person. I mean, I have actually had customers who've had brand new boats, and we've done the MCA Part 1 on them. So they've actually been Part 1 registered. So they've got absolutely 100% proof that the boat's theirs, and it's about £500 or £600. It's done through a YDSA scheme through the MCA at Cardiff for small ships registry, not small ships registry, because that doesn't mean anything.
And to be fair, that is the closest you're going to get. Although all the certificate states this is not proof of title, that is the closest you're going to get to a firm proof of title.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that's a question. Very funny comment. Is it mandatory to open a YouTube channel when you buy a narrowboat? Most people
seems to be.
Absolutely. But do buy really good cameras that capture absolutely everything, and you'll probably make a load of money.
Is this the one we're going to start selling the vloggers pack with every narrowboat sold, where you get a little camera and if not using a broker, at what point does one provide a deposit for sale, and what's the safest way to pay this? Well, that's an interesting one.
Gosh, there is no safe way to pay it.
There's no safe way. If you're not using a broker with a client account, there's no safe way of paying that deposit, and there's no guarantee that you'll get that deposit back. So yeah, can't really answer that one.
There are huge pressures on some of the private sales, aren't there? I mean, let's be honest. A lot of people say, "Oh, I've got someone else coming." You don't put the sale down. It's not something that brokers tend to do, because they know that they're really straight on that one. They'll tell you if there's someone else coming, because there's no benefit to them You know, they're going to get the sale one way or another. But I do say to people, whenever I get phone calls for private sales, the first thing I say is, please don't put too big a deposit down, because I've seen it over the last 35 years where people have taken quite large sums of money and never seen them back.
Yeah, and even some brokers who don't return deposits as well. You've got to ask that question. What are the broker's terms and conditions with the deposit?
There are people who will insist on not putting a deposit down before survey, but a lot of brokers will want to see something. And if the owner is there selling the boat himself privately, I have had a few owners who will accept that they will bring the boat down and lift it out at the buyer's cost, and not take a deposit. But as said, as soon as the survey is complete, I want 30% or something like that. So it is important.
Yeah.
Okay. Is next question, and I'm assuming they're not talking about the wrapper here. Is 2-pack better than bitumen?
Oh God, yes. Yeah, but it's really important. It's all in the preparation. So 40 years ago plus, I was lucky enough to be involved with one of the companies, VC Tar, that came down to us and tried to flog us the material. They actually they shot blast some piers on a jetty we owned, and put the 2-pack on them, and that 2-pack is still there now, and it will lengthen the life. I've done loads of narrowboats and a couple of barges where we've stripped back and epoxied. If you are dealing with iron barges, be really careful about using anything to do with shot, because you can really damage the plating. So it's a really careful way you strip a boat back. But yeah, it's really important. I do think blacking everything, epoxying everything under the waterline, including the base plate, there's no argument in my view. Just do the whole lot. It's great. Well worth every penny.
Cool. Thank you, Ben. And Stuart, can you secure mortgage finance and take a personal loan out for the 20%?
I was wondering whether to try and answer that one, actually. We don't like it. Why don't we like it? And I suppose that's part of a roundabout question. So thinking on my feet about it is that we don't really like it because there's more expense that the buyer's incurring. But if it's affordable, then potentially we could look at that. That isn't going to cause them financial difficulty. I kind of like it when people have got a bit more skin in the game myself, because if they've had to put in their own hard-earned cash and grafted and sweated to get to this wonderful boat, then that means a bit more to me than going to Tesco's and getting whatever loan they or Virgin Money are getting. So I wouldn't say it's a no, but it's not an ideal situation. But yeah, everybody's circumstances are different. So I wouldn't say no, we'll consider it. Persuade me.
Give them a good reason.
Yeah.
Emma, one for you. Is the broker's fee a fixed percentage or a fixed fee per foot? How is it calculated?
Again, most brokers charge a fixed fee, so 6% plus VAT is kind of the standard fee in this kind of area. So yeah, a fixed fee, I would say.
Also,
sorry, not a fixed fee, a fixed percentage, not a fixed fee.
But some brokers offer things. I mean, like you mentioned that in your place, you've got the attraction that all the boats are together, and you offer, was it 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, 4 months. Yeah.
Storage. So again, that can add up to quite a lot of money.
Yes.
But it's also a good way of selling your boat, because it gives opportunities for people to come and look at more than one type of boat and one type of layout.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And actually, that ties in really nicely with another question we've had in, and I think you've probably answered it. You sell boats that are on site, or do you sell boats all over the country, all over the waterways?
All over.
Emma.
We've got a base at Kilworth, North Kilworth, where we is our main base, but we've also got partner marinas around the network as well that offer moorings. If they're moored there, they do viewings for us. But we can sell boats if they're continual cruisers or on a home mooring or on the towpath. Yeah.
Yeah, when you say continuous cruises, you're not running down the towpath after them as they keep moving. They actually have moved up and stopped. It's not like a moving
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, they do have to moor up.
and John Daly's come in with a very good thing. It's not really a question, but should you not hire a narrowboat for a week to experience what might be suitable for you? I think that's a very good idea. I don't think any of us are going to sort of say that's a crazy talk, but no, I think, yeah, it gives you a huge opportunity to experience different types of boats just by going out and using them.
Yeah.
And also the different layouts, because again, if you look around the different companies that hire boats, they all have a different layout. One of the downsides of hiring a lot of these narrow boats is they do tend to pack an awful lot of beds into a space, whereas your normal personal narrowboat would be a bit more opened up. So it's trying to find the right narrowboat to hire to make sure it works. But yes, a very good point, and definitely, I would say a good third of the customers I see have definitely had that line of approach when they've gone to choose a boat.
Right, we're going to have 3 more questions. One of which is, I don't know, what would the phrase "the hull will be made insurable by a broker" imply? Made insurable.
Well, my first question would be, how does a broker know what is insurable and what isn't? And I have this bugbear with surveyors that also say that.
Never said it. Never said it.
Sorry, because
Never said it.
Anything is insurable at a price. So I'm guessing possibly it could be some brokers own boats. It could be that they're going to do some steel work to make it insurable, or the vendor's going to do some steel works. I don't know. You'd have to ask that broker.
I've had certainly surveyors on some of the training courses I've been involved with running, where we've had surveyors say, well, because it's under 3 mil or under 4 mil, it's not insurable. But that all comes down to how thick was it to start with. I mean, we've got boats from the 60s and 70s still knocking around, which were only 3 mil in the first place. But a lot of it is down to steel quality. So I think it's a very dangerous thing to say this is not insurable, unless it's the fact it isn't actually in the float. So I think it's an important one there.
Seems that the insurance requirements are considerably less than finance, to be honest. Like you're going 40 years and less than 4 mil, blimey.
Well, we don't. We'll be
maybe we're too strict.
There's some yachts that go around the world made in Holland that are only 3.8 mil thick, but the way they're built and the way the structure's fitted inside, they're perfectly okay. And it's the same with some of these narrowboats, down to the way the boat is structured and the chines are turned. They're actually quite strong compared to slab-sided and flat-based.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I'm really new to this. Is a safety certificate an annual requirement, like an MOT on a vehicle?
No.
Is it?
No, it's every 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
It's a bit like an MOT, though, isn't it? It is a kind of safety requirement.
It is, yeah. It is like an MOT, but it's every 4 years.
It's actually nothing to do with the hull structure. I think you want to point that one out.
No, it's not.
Talk anything about the actual structure of the hull.
No.
And how important are engine hours? I've looked at a few boats to date, and often the engine hour meters don't work.
Well, there we are. You're lucky if you find
normal.
one that does.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, some of the engines hate actually being left idle for years and years. Can actually be as detrimental as an engine with 7,000 or 8,000 hours on. I mean, I see some perfectly good hire boats with 12,000, 13,000 hours on them, but they've been serviced every couple of hundred hours or every 3 months or something. It's really down to how they've been looked after. The clue is seeing them start from cold, which is so essential, and then let them idle, and then give them a little rev and see how much smoke passes everything, because that's normally a fairly good telltale of how worn something is. But there we are.
Less smoke, the better, are you saying?
Oh God, yes, less smoke, the better.
Right.
Yeah, got to look after environment, don't we?
Can if and I know we don't recommend this, but if you are doing a private sale, are there any templates or contracts or agreements that can be downloaded for anyone, or?
I'm sure if you did a Google search, you would find something, but whether it's illegal, the correct
The RYA
legal.
do one. The RYA
Yes.
do one, if you remember. And
Yeah,
the RYA also provide that your favourite person, Stuart, a solicitor's advice as well. But I don't really think it joins the dots up with narrowboats.
I think I'd pay Emma to do it if I was in that position.
yeah.
And here's an interesting one. This is one we always like. Have you ever had to tell a buyer to walk away? Emma?
No, because everything is repairable on a narrowboat. But Ben might have done as a surveyor. I don't know.
Well, it's not necessarily telling them to walk away. It's normally I've turned around, they've got in their car. But sometimes it's pretty obvious they're not going to buy it.
We've advised people not to buy the boat where normally where the title documentation isn't correct, or
And I think
where the surveys turned out and found it completely overplated.
the overplating one is the biggest one, or the severity of corrosion is so bad against what their expectations were, and it's going to cost them far more than the boat was actually up for sale for. But yeah, I've had a few real nasty ones where I've tapped along the side with the hammer and just gone straight through it without even intending to. You don't go out there deliberately to put
I like the fact
boats.
that without intending to, means
Well, no,
almost suggests on
because
other
sometimes
occasions.
you can hit plate and it sounds perfectly right, and then you'll find that someone's whacked some filler in to hide it, and you'll just put your plate hammer straight through that.
Yeah.
Especially old gas lockers and rubbish like that.
Here's a very topical one. Are electric boats a good investment for the future, or will they go the same way as electric cars?
Ooh.
I'm not sure where electric cars have gone, but will they go that way?
Dropped in value massively.
I think personally, one of the biggest problems with electric boats right now is the system cannot physically support the charging. I know a lot of people have got solar panels on their roofs and everything else, but the actual sheer weight of battery power you need. I've done a few surveys on electric powered boats, and the setup is lovely, and everything looks really good. But then you start talking about cruising range, and basically you've got to have a generator or some sort of backup behind you to just tidy you over those bits. But it is the charging is the biggest problem. And the system, the same as within the coastal water sides, we've got people trying to convert yachts to electric motors, but the problem is the fact that half the marinas haven't got the facilities to charge them.
There's a British Marine member in the Midlands, Catherine Armstrong, who runs a business called Cafwin Cruisers, who's operating 2 electric hire boats in her fleet. If anybody was particularly interested in that side of it, she would be a good person to speak to, or even go and charter an electric boat from. I'm not aware of anybody else who's doing that, but certainly she is.
Cool. And the last 2 questions are going to join into one for you, Ben. Will you carry out a survey regardless of distance to travel? I think you've been all over the world.
Well, I'm going to Scotland in a couple of weeks for one of my clients on repeat business, and quite regularly go out into Europe. But I tend to travel most of the UK within reason. I try and, if I'm doing something well away, I try to do it on a Sunday night so that I'm there for Monday morning ready to go.
I know I said 3. We'll do one more. What is the expectation? We've already done more than that anyway. So what is the expectation of a full survey? Apart from hull, are you assessing other critical gear like engine, that bow thruster, heating systems? What wouldn't you look for also?
Right. So basically, obviously, you've got all the hull side of it. But to me, an internal survey should be about the structure and the systems. So obviously, the internal linings, are they dry? Are they sound? As I said, we've talked about things like Emma mentioned right at the start of looking at water ingress. sometimes water ingress doesn't look a lot. Then you put a moisture meter on it and find it goes down behind the galley units. You open the galley units, you find they're all swollen. So, you know, little things like that, water in the bilges, trying to make sure those things work, systems work, like the loos, if you've got a holding tank or if you've got a flush loo, all those sort of things we will look at. Lights working, heaters working. Quite often you can't see things like diesel heaters, not so much the diesel heater, but sometimes people have a diesel stove, which is quite bespoke to that owner. So I know Emma will back me up on this one, that there are things sometimes you can't actually prove at the time of survey. And so you say before handover, at the handover, go and see your broker and have the owner show you how these work, because every boat can be differently wired up to things. But, you know, I think a survey, you know, it shouldn't tell you if the light in the fridge doesn't work, but it should tell you the fridge works or doesn't work, and what's working and what isn't working, generally speaking.
Cool. Thank you very much. Well, a huge thank you to our panelists who've all joined us here, who've all given up their time to be here tonight and have answered these very good questions. They're all really good. There are some, obviously, we haven't been able to answer. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but we're here. I think myself, Stuart, Emma, we're all going to be at the Crick Boat Show at the end of May, bank holiday. So do come along. Feel free, come and ask us questions. We're more than happy to help. Benny, you going to be coming up to Crick, or?
I might try and get up for one of the weekend, or at least the Saturday or Sunday or something like that.
Cool.
So
we'll
I might
be there
make my
at some
presence
point
known on your
potentially.
stand.
Have you got an ABBA costume, Ben?
No, I
Oh
haven't.
yeah, you need to wear your ABBA costume for the Saturday night. But yeah, so we'll either be at Crick Boat Show, so please come and see us on our various stands. We'll be more than happy to talk you through, answer any questions you may have that are in our relevant fields. In the meantime, here are all our contact details. If you do have any questions about anything tonight, just feel free to pick up the phone, ask any one of us, and we'll be more than happy to either respond, email, talk, and hopefully answer any queries you have. Again, a huge thank you to Emma, Stuart, and Ben, who have given up their time for us tonight and their expertise, all free of charge. Oh, I didn't tell you about that bit, guys. All free of charge. And all I can say is thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you have a really good night. Thank you.